Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of the Street Cop Podcast. I have with us again for the second time ever the best clinician in the state of New Jersey, self-proclaimed. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah, she's brushing her shoulders off. We're on a Zoom meeting, so you can see, if you are actually watching this on video, you'll be able to see this. But if not, you could imagine this studious-looking young woman brushing her shoulders off here with her gleaming white teeth smile. Really, really, those are some good choppers.
Thanks, man. Never had braces.
That's good. Good genetics.
Thanks.
But we are here today talking about more mental health for law enforcement with Jenna Romano. Hi.
Hey.
What's today's topic of conversation?
Relationships.
All right. So take it away. Where do you want to start?
Well, so from the last podcast that we did, some of the feedback that I got was that officers were listening to this podcast with their significant other, which I thought was amazing, but I also didn't really expect it because we were talking about them, not so much their spouses at that point in time. I even had heard from mothers of law enforcement that were listening, spouses, therapists. I was like, damn.
We're doing it.
We doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about relationships. So like if anyone's listening, put it on pause, go get your boo, and come back and hit the play button.
I like this.
All right?
I honestly am going to say this right now, and people don't know this, but we have developed quite the friendship off camera and off this recording. I don't know if throughout my life I will not be your friend. You know what I mean?
Thanks, Dennis.
I think we're going to be long time friends. This is my gut tells me.
You're my Biff.
Well, I feel like I have to earn a little bit of that more, but yeah,
okay.
Can I get put in the top 10 on your MySpace?
On the MySpace.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Top 10 me.
What did I have on my MySpace? Neo, the remix with Joe Budden.
I don't even remember what the music was that I had.
I remember.
It was a while ago. Plus, I used to drink quite a bit back then.
Wow.
And I wasn't very tech savvy.
No, you didn't.
But I do remember in 2004 being in the District 1 headquarters where I worked at U.S. Park Police and seeing somebody on Facebook. And I said to this guy that I worked with, I said, "What's that?" And he said, "It's Facebook. You can't get on it, though, because you have to have a college account and you're not in college." And I said,
"That's right."
Yeah, I'll never forget. I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." I'll never forget when I had my first Facebook account in 2008. I mean, I was just not tech savvy. Now I'm much more open to all that stuff. But let's go back to the relationship thing.
All right, let's do it.
So people have their wives and mothers and siblings and the people that they love next to them listening to this podcast. So they're going to recommend it to them. Let's discuss. I don't even know where you're going with this. We haven't even spoken about the topic of conversation today. I'm just going
to wing it. We wing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's what's best. Let's just see where it goes.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, what do you think is like number one stressor of being a law enforcement spouse?
Well, I think you're going to talk about being a law enforcement officer. I could answer
No,
that.
No. We're giving the spouses a little highlight right now, too.
Okay. I'm going to just start with, well, let me just go to this topic, and I'm going to throw it out there into the universe, and then we'll circle back around to the spouse. It's just that I believe the number one issue for law enforcement is administrative internal stuff. That's number one. There's no doubt in my mind. I just don't know how. That's got to be the top. A lot of things have a lot of value and carry a lot of weight when we're talking about mental health. That's the number one.
Yeah.
So let's go to what do I think wives, spouses, and they're worried about somebody being killed in the line of duty. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Number one fear.
Yep.
Anxiety.
Guess more?
Keep going. I'm writing these down.
Okay.
I brought my notepad this time so that we can stay on track.
Hey, lady, look at me. See this? I got notes too. Got notes for days. Nice. Okay, so the next one I'm going to guess is, and people are probably yelling at their audio listening device saying, "No, this one's." So if I miss one, it's just because I'm merely being put on the spot and haven't put a lot of thought into it.
Right.
How about the fact that their spouses or significant others are missing life events?
Big one.
Okay.
Big one. I cover this in my Relationship block. Okay, big one. Absolutely. I mean, part of being in a relationship is experiencing things together, shared memories, right? And that's really hard to do when there are really, really important events and traditions that are not happening or being missed. And that kind of segment in that into like always coming number two, you know? I think I kind of like touched on that on the last podcast. We come second. And that's a really, really difficult thing for some people to know that something is more important than you. It's hard in a relationship, I think.
I'm going to say two things, but I'll share a personal experience of mine years ago. What am I? So 16 years ago, I dated a girl who I'm actually very good friends with still, friends with her husband. And she wanted me to go to something that meant a lot to her, but I couldn't make it. I was actually working in Washington, D.C., but living in New Jersey because I worked at a federal agency. And we had a schedule that allowed me to travel back to Jersey for my personal time. And she had something very important. And I said, I can't make it. And she went to it. And she was really broken up over the fact that I couldn't be there. And I tried to explain, we were younger, 24, 23. I said, it's just part of the dynamic of dating a police officer. So, oddly enough, and if she's listening or my friend, her husband is listening, she married a police officer. So went on to continue. By the way, at my recommendation, when she had met this fellow, I said, I think this is the guy that you should really relieve your current relationship and go check this dude out. And they got married and had kids, and they're wonderful together.
Wow, that's nice.
Yep. Here's a little quick side note. I'm friends with all my ex-girlfriends, almost all of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yep. I never left on a crazy note. Just I don't think it's going to be it. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, then that's good.
I'm not a dramatic person,
I don't see you as being one.
So I could disengage from a relationship in an amicable manner.
And just turn off the romance and just turn on the friendship.
Yeah. I could separate the two.
Yeah. You're really emotionally broken.
So good.
I'm just kidding.
It's probably pretty true.
I'm joking. No, that's I don't know a lot of spouses who would be comfortable with that. That takes a level of confidence as a significant other to be comfortable with that. And B, for you, like I said, like turning on and off that light switch. It's like, if you've been there before, how do you just look at someone as something less than you looked at them before?
I think that in my mind, in some kind of a dating relationship, would say, okay, this person meets the qualification that I would consider maybe a long-term relationship. And then I would give it that time, and I would just weigh pros and cons in my mind. Is this the person I'm going to marry? And if it was really no doubt that it was not that person I was going to marry, if it's not 100% yes, then it's a no for me.
Shit or get off the pot.
Well, I mean, and a lot of people, let's face facts, will not have the ability to discern, and they will remain in relationships they should not remain in. So I'm able to, that's probably some of the reason why I have business success. I'm able to do that in business as well. And so that's probably it's not an easy thing to do. It doesn't mean I don't have any emotion towards it, but I don't let the amygdala control the real brain.
That's right. Prefrontal cortex.
Yeah. Whatever it may be.
Yeah, man.
I know some fancy terms too, but let me ask you this.
Good. Why?
How you're the wife of a law enforcement officer. Has this affected you at all?
Yep. My husband was in the military when we got together. So I came in this very fucking cocky. Like, if I can handle living a majority of our time away from each other, then I can handle this. It's a totally different fucking animal. And I think that anybody listening who's been in the military can relate to that. So I came in and I was like, I got this. I worked, working in a jail. He was in the he was in the military. He was stationed in West Virginia. We got to see each other on the weekends. I'm like, this is nothing. This is a cakewalk. Totally different animal. And I think that part of that has to do with mentally tuning in and out. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you're on if you're deployed, your mindset shifts. When you come back home, your mindset ideally should shift back. Sometimes that doesn't happen. That's part of the issue, right? But the difference with law enforcement is that you're doing it 5 days out of the week, maybe even more, depending on how much overtime they're taking. And it's a portion of every single part of your day. So how do you do that multiple times throughout the week, if that makes any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. But now I'm shifting back over to law enforcement, not spouses. So let me come back. See, because our needs get suffocated sometimes. We start to, everything gets so focused on the job that we kind of forget about us a little bit,
I agree. You know what? I try to, as you speak, put myself in the position of a spouse of a law enforcement officer and try to understand that side of it. And, maybe for the first time ever, and actually it's bringing up something where I think that there are masculine roles being played, and I think men expect women to understand that they have to provide and they have to be there and da-da-da. But I think men also have to have an accountability that, yes, bills have to be paid, but there has to be some good communication and deploying some empathy to the side of what is the other person going through? What is your wife going through? What is your significant other, your spouse, your girlfriend, who you're eyeing up for a future marriage going through? What are your kids going through?
I have a great example. I hate this example, but we're going to go there. Okay. You ready to go there? All right. I'm going to go off on a couple minute tangent, but I swear I'm going to come back. Okay.
Okay.
So this is a story about how the job can affect significant others and children. So clinically, we would call it secondary trauma. What that is, and by the way, you guys as law enforcement, you're exposed to it too. So you have trauma, which is something that, you're firsthand experiencing, loss of control, jeopardizing your safety, those kinds of things. Then you have secondary trauma, which is your DV calls, your child abuse calls. So that's when someone else experiences a critical incident or something that's traumatic to you, and you're affected by it through empathy and through physically being there to deal with the aftermath. And that's something that you're exposed to as a police officer, but also as a spouse, we're definitely 110% exposed to it too. About 3 years ago, I was meeting my husband at the mechanic in the town that he works. And this was the first time going to the mechanic. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew which street it was on. So I was driving ahead, my daughter in the car. She was 3 or 4 years old. And when I was driving down the street, I noticed that there was a tractor trailer jackknifed in the middle of the road. So I couldn't continue down. I had to turn. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? I didn't really think too much about it. So I called my husband. I'm like, calling him. He's not picking up the phone. So 2 seconds later, cops fly down, sirens going. Everybody's in line. You can see something's going on. And what's my daughter in the back seat? Oh, daddy's in those cars. And I'm like, yeah, great. Trying to breathe, because I always think the worst. And that's what I think that a lot of spouses that I talk to think the worst. And that's something that we discuss. So anyway, make a long story a little bit shorter. I was calling him. He wasn't picking up. I was circling around trying to find this place. About 5 or 10 minutes go by. I actually ended up finding the mechanic on my own. I pull into the mechanic, and up walks my husband, who is covered in blood. So rewinding a little bit, what happened was he was driving to come and meet us. He saw a drunk driver driving on the opposite side of the road, which is what caused the tractor trailer to jackknife. And he sirens on, The guy did not stop. He continued to speed and drive home, driving on lawns, like all over the place. This guy was a mess. When he got out of the car, he decided that he wanted to resist arrest. And they got into a grapple. He tried to take my husband's gun. In the scuffle, his radio got switched to DPW.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't even on the police line anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's calling for backup and nobody's getting it. And my husband works in the detective bureau. He had his gun on him, but he didn't have his handcuffs on him. You son of a bitch. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Big mistake.
Big mistake. So now he's grappling with this guy. You got people in their front yard, with their fucking video cameras. Fuck that pig up, the whole nine. So he finally apprehends this guy. And that's who was passing us when my daughter made the comment about there goes all the cop cars, that was daddy's backup. And I had no idea. And this happened about a quarter of a mile away from me. If I had turned my head to the right, being at the mechanic, I would have seen this happening. So anyway, the moral of the story is that when he walked up to the car, he was filled in blood, and you could tell that he was still in go mode. It was like the robotic part of him. It wasn't like the adrenaline was still pumping, but he crossed the street to come and see us because he knew I was waiting there. My daughter becomes hysterical because she doesn't know what's going on with her dad. She doesn't understand why she can't hug him. She doesn't understand if he's hurt. She doesn't really know what's going on. And I'm sitting here like, bloodborne pathogens, don't fucking touch us. Go to the hospital, right? So, Dennis, what I would say is that now I'm going to sound like you. I was born for this, right? So I can handle it. I was born for it. I'm okay with it. It's uncomfortable, but I'm okay with it. To see the look of sheer fucking terror and confusion on my 4-year-old's face could fucking evoke the Holy Spirit inside of me. She did not ask for her dad to be a police officer. She did not ask for the ripple effect of some of the things that he would have to go through as a police officer. And to this day, she's now turning 7. She still asks me on occasion if daddy's okay, if a bad guy's going to hurt daddy, if he's going to come home with a bleed. That's what she calls like an injury. Is daddy going to have a bleed? Is daddy going to be okay? Can we call daddy at work? And that's the shit that like rips at my heart, So that is secondary trauma. That's somebody experiencing a critical event and the ripple effect of how that affects the people around them. That was traumatic for her. It stays with her. Otherwise, she wouldn't still bring it up. It stays with me too, honestly, because every time I pull into that mechanic still, I always look across the street at the house. I don't know why. I do. It's just like a natural instinct for me, and I feel uncomfortable. I mean, and that's secondary trauma. So if you look at the ripple effect, if people only knew what one incident does to an entire system, a family system, a work system, if people only knew how that affects so many people around you, right? Like her, me, him, everyone. I think that we need to really start validating that and understanding that impact. I just talked a lot, so now you go.
No. That's probably the best. You made me emotional. Right?
I mean, I get choked up. I think about my kid. You can hurt me all you want to hurt me, but I'm picturing her face in my mind, and it literally chokes me up. And there's not much that will do that to me.
Mm.
You know?
Same. I think that that was a very valuable story. I don't know how to follow it up. Listening to it, I can go into my own thoughts and experiences. That's probably where it brought me to. I imagine most people who are listening to this, it may
Right.
have brought them to the same place. So I don't even want to talk. I want you to keep going and elaborating on that. Where do we go from there? What does that mean? What are
Right.
those moments in people's careers that they are now reflecting on that they didn't realize had more of a significant impact on those who love them than anything else?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So like, let's take a look at the impact of a critical incident like that. Okay. I'm writing things down. All right. So my daughter, right? We obviously talked about that, how that affects her in the long term, being worried about her dad. And luckily I'm a therapist, right? So like when she has those moments, it's like, okay, how are you feeling? Are we feeling worried? What do we need to do about that? How do we resolve that? Are we feeling confused? Do you need to ask me some questions? We need just a little bit of reassurance. Do we need to call daddy? So I hope that I handle that appropriately. Um, so again, like affecting the kids, affecting me, right? Because it's like now, whenever I think the worst and he pulls one of the, shit, what, like, why are you always thinking the worst? If you call me a couple times, I don't pick up. It doesn't necessarily mean the worst. And I'm like, well, what about this time? So
Mhm.
like, even for me, being able to keep that anxiety in check a little bit. If we look at how that affected him, I mean, you can talk about stress and burnout. So
So you think
now
that somebody could live with constant anxiety while their significant other's at work? It is a constant state of fear while that person's away.
some people do.
Hmm.
Some wives that I talk to do. I mean, I'm in communication with, there's a couple different Facebook groups where it's spouses of law enforcement. There's like, I think like over 3,000 throughout the nation. We just kind of like talk back and forth, connect with one another. I even have a spousal support group. It's called Behind the Badge that I started. So we just kind of support one another. And I think that it's a lot easier to talk to people about those realities who are in it. I mean, if I talk to my friends, they can only empathize so much. Um, but talking to people who face those fears daily is a lot more effective. But yeah, there are people who I talk with some women whose spouses are on overnight shifts, and they, like, literally, we talk about like coping skills for sleep because they're waking up in the middle of the night checking their phone,
Hmm.
uncomfortable,
Hmm.
you know like, not to be corny, but we say like the sound of Velcro is like the best noise in the world, because after an overnight shift, when you guys come home, we hear the vest come off. It's like, okay, we're good for the day, you know
Mm.
so yeah, people definitely live with that. I mean, I think that it's a real reality for us, and it's something, again, that some of us may not have directly chosen, right? Like, we choose our professions. We have a say, hopefully, in things like that, in our marriage, but we can't control what you guys are exposed to. We can't control what you guys go through. We can't control how you're going to react to what you go through. And I think that being in tune with that is half the battle. So number one, understanding the realities of the job and the nature of the job, fully having full transparency, which I don't think happens a lot. I think that you guys try to keep that. I think that you guys try to keep us protected from that. Not so much within my marriage, because my husband understands where I've worked, what I've done, and my understanding of it already. So that we really have an open dialogue about it. But I do speak to a lot of other officers and significant significant others who are like, I am in the total fucking dark. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what their day looks like. And that leaves people very, very anxious.
How do you start a conversation with a significant other before we get too far ahead out of that?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, how do we start? How do we fix some of that?
Right. Have an open dialogue, man. Like, how was your day today? You know what? My day was hard. Why? Well, I had a call for a kid who is the same age as our kid who was being sexually abused by their mom. And that fucking bothered me. And I wanted to take that kid home. I mean, whatever, I'm just painting a picture. Right.
Yeah.
Or like, I had a DV victim who did not want to fucking cooperate. And I'm so frustrated because I can't understand why wouldn't she just leave this dude? Whatever.
What's the job of a significant other or a spouse in that dialogue, right? They're inviting it, but also to how are you reacting to that? Are you being more compassionate as well? I mean, listen, we're seeing the other side of it, but let's talk about both sides doing the right thing for each other. Yeah.
I love that. Okay. Yes, because I've had an officer who did tell me that he did not like to speak with his significant other because she seemed very overly critical. He worked as a correction officer, and it was like, well, you got shanked today because you should have been more aware of your surroundings, or you told me this story, but you did this wrong, right? So his natural reaction was to talk to a coworker about it instead, because in the end, we always have our needs being fulfilled. So if I have the need to talk about something and I don't feel comfortable doing that with my significant other, I'm going to find somebody else to talk to about it. What I said to him was, I can guarantee that if your wife knew that she was missing out on an opportunity to feel more intimate with you, if it were explained to her in that way, like, hey man, I really, really want to talk to you about this, but I really feel like you're judging me. And I'm going to talk to somebody else, and somebody else is going to get that intimate part of me. If she were looking at it through those eyes, I think she might really consider the consequences of doing that and alter her behavior a little bit more. But we need to know what we're asking for, right? So know your needs, know what you're asking for. Hey man, I just want you to listen right now. Don't come up with any solutions for me. I don't need you to say anything. I just need you to listen.
Yeah, communication is important.
Right? But you got to know what you're asking for.
You think that dials back to really choosing the right partner to be with as well?
Absolutely. And finding attunement. Like, I understand you, you understand me. Right? So like there are some days, and again, this is in my training too, but there are some days, my husband has several kinds of days at work. So not only do I need to understand what his job entails, but I need to understand how he reacts to his job. That it's two parts, if that makes sense. So when he comes home from work, I can tell. I'm like an emotionally intelligent person, I like to believe, and we're in tune with one another. So when he comes home, some days he's quiet and he doesn't want to talk at all. He just wants to sit and be together. Some days he wants to talk. He'll sit down. He'll be like, I want to run this past you. Like, let me know what you think about X, Y, Z. He's inquisitive. He wants to learn. He values my feedback, which I really like, right? It's because that's the micro communication behind that is I value your feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some days where he does not want to talk at all, and he will disappear. When he gets home from work, we call it like his bathroom break, like wink, wink, like, okay, you're really going to sit in the bathroom for an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But I leave him alone because I know that he needs to decompress, whatever reason that may be. He just needs time alone. So being very in tune with those needs. And if you're not very in tune, then I'm going to ask your significant other, like I said, what do you need? If you need a couple minutes to be alone, spouses, don't take it personal. Don't get upset about it. We know that you've been waiting to see them all day. We know that your needs are important too, right? Because on their end, it might be like, you don't want to see me. I've been waiting all day to see you. And it's just really understanding and respecting that there are two different conflicting needs at that moment and how we're going to address both of them, if that makes any sense.
Do you think there are universal. I tend to think as I'm sitting here listening to this that to be a clinician, a therapist, you always have to take into account that probably, and this is just me guessing, I'm not a therapist, good communicator, and I think I'm fairly intelligent. Um, the the dynamic of one size fits all is probably a hard thing to try to implement into anybody. Giving practical advice, knowing different personalities, and there are other dynamics that people may be dealing with. Maybe dealing with people who are in a state of depression, anxiety. So, although these
Right.
resources may be one way to try to cope, I imagine it's not a one size fits all. Even trying to have this dialogue and have this conversation may fix for a lot of people, but I
Right.
would urge folks, don't get dissuaded by trying to understand and resolve the issue just because this kind of application didn't work for you. That makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and that's why I really like with my trainings, I'm not like very didactic, like I'm not like very educational. I'm very much interactive
Hmm.
because I work best with feedback. So yeah, like when I'm talking to you, these are very general applications, but that highly depends on specifically what's going on, the personality of your significant other, the emotional
Hmm.
intelligence of your significant other, their ability to communicate their emotions, their and what kind of day they had too, right? So it's like you don't, there are a lot of different variables to consider.
See, what's interesting for me, I really do believe that I'm somebody who's very, very calm, willing to listen. I do not get aggravated or agitated. Look, Facebook shut our group down, right? 2 days ago. I'm telling you, my blood pressure didn't go up a tick. We've already slid everybody over, 10, now we're at 10,000 members. We got 6 people on staff right now who've been focused on putting those. So my point is that we've, maneuvered to the new group right away. It takes a lot to get me worked up beyond the point where I can be understanding or willing to listen.
Mhm.
But I was in a lot of relationships without going into my, nobody wants to hear until you're drinking. You want to hear my fun stories from my 20s. But there are a lot of people that I engage with, women, who were not like me. And I think that if I had progressed forward into a relationship, as we're talking about relationships, with somebody who was not like me, I don't know if they would be willing to have the right personality or mindset to be understanding of this. I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of people are, as I'm it's so interesting how I've deep dove into the world of um, mental health. This is how the Lord pushes me along into areas where He needs us to show up and do the work. Really getting very, very interested in learning a lot about it. And when you learn a lot about people who are, that could possibly suffering some kind of mental health issue, I think with that comes a lot of empathy. But you might not get that reciprocating back from them because they're not empathetic because of their mental condition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, if their depression is causing them to be isolated and withdrawn, that's going to come off as feeling like somebody's feeling very cold, right? If somebody feels highly anxious and that's coming off as
Mm-hmm.
being very irritable, nitpicking,
Mm-hmm.
um, th- but underneath that, when you peel back that onion, it's like you just have, you have somebody who's suffering from anxiety, let's just say. There's always
Mm-hmm.
a deeper level that kind of goes behind it, but we in relationships, I mean, and I call it the ripple effect, right? So we in relationships see that emotion and that behavior that results from the emotion, and we react emotionally back to it because it's hard when you're emotionally invested with someone to only think logically all of the
Mm-hmm.
time. It's really great to think with a hybrid of your brain and your heart. Like you want a hybrid of the two.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
want to operate only like logistically from the brain because that's going to come
Mm-hmm.
off as cold too. You don't want to only operate based upon emotion because that may not always be logical, right? Like if I am operating on emotion all of the time, that could look like somebody did something to me and I interpret and I felt disrespected and I interpret that as an injustice that was done to me, when in reality, the person was just correcting a behavior that needed to be corrected. If that makes any sense, So like operating on only emotion, we can turn our emotions into our reality very easily. So operating from a hybrid of the two, the brain and the heart.
Do you think that people develop their coping skills or communication skills through trial by fire? I have very much what I believe is extreme EQ. Probably another reason why we are experiencing the success that we have. I very rarely, interject emotion or mix the two, especially when it comes to business decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I often think of, did my life experiences get me to this point? And I'll also sprinkle in the top that I began to learn, I've always had good coping skills because of my upbringing. I had a very difficult childhood. Went right into law enforcement at 19, got thrown into a jail setting, and the sink or swim mentality. There was no guidance really. We had 3 days of field training, and my communication skills got better there. They had to, or it was not good. Who knows what could have happened. And then I think that also some of the examples we see, which could be more attracted to us, of, hey, this is how this person deals with things. It's very admirable. We always look at those leaders who do not listen. I speak with emotion when I talk, right? I call things out, but I'm putting a presentation on. I'm controlling the room through emotions. I want to get people to feel what I feel and the passion in my heart. I try to tell people, don't get confused. Way to learn. Yeah. Don't get confused with my humility and my communication skills. Once somebody asks a question, I dial it down 20 notches and we go into a one-on-one conversation with respect on both sides. I feel like I have learned that from watching others be that way or behaving that way towards me. And I've been very turned off on those who don't communicate that way. I guess what I'm saying is people also have to check themselves on how they're communicating, wives and husbands.
Yes.
Right? Does it make sense?
100%.
We keep saying that to each other. We keep asking, does that make sense to each other?
We always make sense. Just know that.
I think so. Yeah, I'm trying.
No, it does. It makes sense, because when we talk about effective communication, what is communication? I deliver a message to you. You receive the intended message and you deliver a message back. That's the logistic of communication.
You think sometimes letting dust settle and coming back when cooler heads prevail is always a good idea?
110%. Mm-hmm. You're never, because when you're operating on sheer emotion, like we just talked about, emotions become reality. You start to react based upon your emotion, not the issue at hand. And your ability to resolve the actual issue at hand is diminished by you attempting to resolve your emotion instead, if that makes any sense. I just did it again.
I know.
If that makes sense.
Catch up. Yeah, you got to catch on to these things,
Yeah. So again, like I'm coming back to my trainings all the time, right? But extracting your needs from emotion, that's one of the exercises that I do. So it's picking your emotion or a time that you felt like you had an emotion that was, for better lack of terms, controlling your behavior, and extracting what need wasn't being fulfilled that was producing that emotion. So, I mean, that could be, I'll just give you a general example because anybody listening can probably relate to this one. You come home from work and you're late and you miss dinner, and your significant other, their behavior is very turned off from you. You could tell something's wrong. They're pissed off. They're not making eye contact with you. They're cleaning up. They're cold. They're off, right? Now that we're going to analyze that behavior, but let's take a look at the emotion that
manifested,
resulted, right, in the behavior, right? Like a domino effect. A had to happen for B to happen. Now, that significant other may be feeling in the back of their mind, like, God damn you, man. Excuse my language. I had the kids all day
Jenna,
long.
first of all, let me back up a second. You just said, excuse my language on goddamn me. You've been dropping fuck 64 times in this podcast, and you're going to excuse yourself for goddamn.
Yes, I respect the Lord above, okay?
Oh, he don't like
I don't like to use his name in vain. I'm Italian. I would have gotten hit with a wooden spoon for that one. But fuck, I could say. Fangul. Okay. So that significant other may be feeling like, shit, I was at home with these kids all day. I'm going to lose my fucking mind. I made your ass dinner. You didn't come home on time. Now that's still the anger. But let's boil down behind the anger. I fucking miss you, man. I just wanted to see you. Mm-hmm. I wanted to spend time with you and see your face and feel being your significant other, your husband, your wife, whoever it may be, right? Like that's really like what's underneath. So the need is feeling connected to somebody. The behavior is showing something totally different. So now the significant other has a few different ways of how they can react to that. Maybe they become emotionally charged, right? Like, well, you know what? I wanted to be home for dinner. I didn't want to be late. I would have rather been here than dealing with the bullshit that I was dealing with at work. So F you. Now that's defensiveness, right? So, and then that contributes to the trickle down effect. Now we're all just responding to each other based upon emotion. Where is that going to get us in this context? Not really very far, especially not getting our needs met, which our main goal is to have our needs met. So this significant other, if they were looking at it from this context, I just behaved in a way that actually worked against me having my needs met. And if you reframe it in a way like that, to people, they might actually be able to step back and be like, oh, wow, damn, why would I do that? Why would I behave in a way that's going to cause my needs to either not be met or a delay in getting them met? And so then they can evaluate, you know what? I can choose to act differently. I can go up and I can give my husband a kiss and say, you know what? I'm really let down that you weren't here for dinner because I just really missed you. And I just need 10 minutes to kind of cool off from that. All right, we could do that. Right?
I think about people listening to this and don't have reservations. My advice to you is be open-minded to what you're hearing today, because even if you're not in a relationship now, these are really good things to consider as you progress in life. I have two questions for you. Actually, where you led into is leading into my questions. Mm-hmm. I'm going to come back to one, but I'm going to go, I'm using myself as an example because I have nobody else to compare myself to or to compare the example to. When I decided to make a change about myself or who I was or how I was behaving and really starting to see examples of people that I thought were more admirable to act like, I made a conscious decision to begin to change my behaviors. People always say people don't change. People don't change when they don't want to change. People will change when they want to change.
Correct.
So emotional control, are there ways to learn how to practice that? And would you agree that makes you more powerful? And I'll give one more example before I'm going to return to that question. Mm-hmm. If I'm becoming irritable, generally at night, especially if I have a big day the next day and I have to get sleep in, and my kids, I will recognize myself. Okay, you're in a bad mood, right? Just keep that in mind, Den. You're in a bad mood. These kids are going to piss you off at everything they do. They're just children. They're just trying to play with you. They miss their dad, right? Like, it's not that they don't understand that you have to work tomorrow. It's 10 o'clock at night. They should have been sleeping, but now they're jumping around on the bed. And I try to just keep in mind of how I'm feeling. And it's very, very rare that I get into a bad mood. But it happens. Mm-hmm. And I try to very much recognize that. I could tell you the last bad mood I was in, I had to clean my basement. And I came up, it was before a party. My wife said, what is wrong? See, I'm so positive that when she knows something's wrong because I just clam up. and I don't want to take it out on anybody else. I just got to need a little time to, to get past it. And I just responded, I'm never cleaning this basement again. I just want you to know that there is no reason why I'm cleaning this friggin' basement. There's nothing that irritates me more than inane housework that I can hire somebody else to do it. I have to sound fancy, but I am running a company. We actually have real things to do here. Mm-hmm. And that, as I'm cleaning in my head, I'm saying, I could be doing this. Why am I fucking picking up toys? Why do I have a vacuum? I'm the leader of a, maybe the largest police training company in the country, and I'm in the goddamn basement on a Saturday for 3 hours. I'd rather be spending this time playing with my kids and cleaning up and doing inane stuff. And I'll try to throw something I'll throw a podcast on to try to make valuable time out of it, but I was hot. So I'm going to go back to this other thing again.
Prioritizing.
Emotional control. Recognizing when you're not well. What are some tips that you can give people? And are there resources to learn beyond this podcast and our conversation to how to get more? Would internet searches fare you well? So go answer that. And I have another question after that.
Okay. So I'm here as a stress and burnout coach. I'm not practicing psychotherapy anymore. So my goal is to have you self-help or seek help, right? That's what I'm here to do. So yes, you can absolutely self-coach yourself. If you find that your needs exceed being able to do that, that's when we would be seeking help, right? So 110%, what you're describing is when you're saying emotional control, what we would call that as a clinician, I would say distress tolerance. How emotionally charged can I be to the point where I'm unable to tolerate that distress at that point in time? So yes, there are definitely different techniques. One of the ones that we were talking about was emotional identification, right? So coming back and saying, all right, this is how I feel. What emotion goes along with that? And is there a way that I can dial back that emotion? Let's say I'm feeling it at a 10. The goal is not to feel it at a 0. That's not very practical, to be able to say, yeah, I'm so emotionally charged. I don't want to feel that emotion at all. But if we can bring that emotion from a 10 to a 6, now that emotion becomes workable, if that makes any sense. Oh shit, we did it again. Making sense.
No, hold on. We didn't do it. You did it.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going with that one.
I'm your coach here on podcasting.
I'll take that hit. Just be ready for me to throw one back.
You got it. Now I'm going to be real conscious of things I say.
No, I'm joking. So not really though. I'm not joking. So dialing back that emotion, and that can be done in a variety of ways, and you have to figure out what works for you. Like you were just talking about before, those coping skills, is that trial and error to an extent. Some of those coping skills have been developed from childhood, which is another whole different topic that we can get into. Some are developed as kids, some are more maladaptive and not so great than others. And being able to differentiate which ones are healthy and which ones are not, obviously. But some of them are 110% trial and error. You can't try something if you don't know that it exists. Again, it's where self-help and I come into play. So you can implement delay strategies, right? I'm so emotionally charged. I'm at a 10. I will not be responding to my wife until I'm at a 6, when I will say something that will not contribute to the problem, but will contribute to the solution.
Wonderful.
Right?
Yeah.
So now what can I do to go from a 10 to a 6? Number one, I can communicate with my significant other. I can say to them, I'm really fucking charged up right now. I am not ignoring you or being passive aggressive to you. I would like to table this until I can resolve how I'm feeling a little bit more and be more productive. Beautiful, right? Now,
and hopefully your partner responds well to that.
Hopefully. Okay. Now, and some of these things, like if we try some of these tips and they're not very well received, again, like when do we find ourselves at a red flag of like, how healthy are our communication skills? Do we need to seek out a third party to help us with that? Right.
Yeah, marriage counseling.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of people will say that to me, like, I've changed this behavior, that behavior, and I can't understand why my significant other is not receptive to it. Are we talking about some dysfunctional parts of your marriage? Or are we talking about some miscommunication? Are we talking about your significant other suffering from something a little bit larger, like you were talking about, some anxiety, depression that's inhibiting their ability to connect to you? Because that can happen too. So again, there's not one size fits all. It's very, very individualized. But yeah, so being able to communicate that with your significant other, and then being able to say, I'm going to table this, and either if you table an argument, it's your job to bring it back up. You can't table it and forget about it, because that's not fair either. So being able to say, I need 2 hours to go for a walk to clear my mind. I need to go hit the punching bag. I need to go be alone. I need to go for a drive. Obviously, not if you're too emotionally charged and you're going to be driving like a lunatic or not paying attention to the road. But finding whatever that coping skill is that's going to get you to a lower intensified, emotionally speaking, place where you can be a little bit more productive and not, again, like complicate that argument to a point that it doesn't need to be complicated to.
Really reverse engineering the other person's psyche, right? Or at least having empathy to their position. That's really, I think, this important thing for even when we have people who sling mud at this company, right? I mean, look, let's face facts. We're trying to get more bad guys in jail and keep more cops alive. In the grand scheme of things, that is the giant overall blanket mission of this. If you look at everything we do, that really covers everything that we're talking about. I have to try to understand where somebody's at, that they are so frustrated with what they're doing as to why they would consider us to be threatening when that's our mission objective. So anytime that I hear something about, I don't really let any of it bother me. It's actually a good sign that you're having success when you have some haters.
Right.
But I also try to understand, where are they at? What is driving that behavior that somebody's going to act that way? And I don't really try to engage on the same level. You know, I've actually told our instructors here, namely about other companies and other people who we know that are very much doing what they can to run interference for us, which is hard to do because our product is so, it's like trying to control water and a rushing stream with 3 bricks. You can try to put your 3 bricks up, but we're very powerful in the sense that our products are so good that you can't deny it. You can't hide it from people. They're going to find out about it. And it's just the best of the best of the best, at least in our thought. And by the way, I'm also not saying that there aren't other companies that we partner with or acknowledge that are very valuable, but just for us. So I always tell our guys, please don't sink to their level. I don't want to hear anybody talking about another company in a bad way. I don't want you to talk about other people in a bad way. It's a very, very unattractive thing to do. And it speaks volume. Yeah. And I think the same thing goes back to that's a form of a relationship, and trying to understand what is making somebody do that. Why are they so angry?
Absolutely.
And it goes deep, right? It goes real deep beyond what we're seeing at the surface level, where we can at least guess at. I didn't know that the dude was, barely making his bills, defaulting on this. There could be a lot of things going on as to why he or she is frustrated at us when we haven't done anything to them, essentially.
Right.
Maybe wanted to be that person so badly that it creates bad behavior, wanting to be this law enforcement thought leader, and but just couldn't figure it out, and just so frustrated because they're trying and trying and trying, but they don't have it. No different than somebody who's going to try to be on the Mets, played baseball their whole life, and just can't figure out why they have not been able to get even into the minor leagues. What did I do wrong? How come I'm not getting this? I think about things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that really wasn't much of a question.
It wasn't.
Here's one.
But I got
Let me ask
you.
you this. Why do you think the divorce rate amongst police officers is so high?
Can I tell you? I do want to tell you. I think that from what I've read and the data that I've seen, it has nothing to do with the profession. It has everything to do with the level of PTSD within the profession. So and this was actually one of my notes right here, attachment and trauma. So when you And that's not to say that everybody in law enforcement has PTSD, but if you do have PTSD, your rate of divorce is much higher than those that do not
Do some
exhibit.
people not know they have PTSD?
Yeah.
Subconsciously, yeah. How would somebody acknowledge if they have PTSD? Because I got to tell you, during this session here that we've been discussing, a lot of emotions were coming out that I never knew existed for myself. Isn't that
Really?
interesting? Yeah, and I'm not an emotional person. So a lot of, if it's affecting me this way and I'm the fucking host of this thing and we're friends and I'm supposed to be the candor back and forth and being thoughtful with things, um, I was going through a lot of emotions and not
Fucking up your
happy,
swag?
sad, which no. I think it's really cool. Like I like the idea that I was able to, because I'm not an emotional person, that I was able to get emotional on the story you told, the impact, the Velcro things. I'm reliving my life as to, I'm familiar with that sound and what it meant even for me. I'm familiar with relationships and strifes. And, I never took into consideration what my wife was going through when I was in the field. Even what she might be going through when I'm traveling. And I try to think about a lot of that stuff that she's going through.
Yeah.
The security, the safety of having me around. She's expressed that to me, and trying to put things in place to feel better about it, right? Namely pistols, dogs, and alarm systems.
Yeah. 100%.
So for me, and we'll circle back around to the divorce thing, is if it's affecting me this way, I know that it's affecting other people this way as well. And I think it's probably I just know in my heart as we talk about these things, how important the dynamic of continually doing these podcasts is going to be for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So back to divorce rate, living with PTSD.
Yeah.
Some people how would you acknowledge or know that you had PTSD,
Learn the signs and the symptoms.
What are some of those?
Yeah. So, there are quite a few. Well, first knowing, if you've been in a critical incident, like obviously you'd be at a higher rate, because
Could a critical incident be something like a very, very hot and heavy internal affairs investigation where they were just raking you over the fucking coals?
that could be very traumatic for some people, especially if they have a fear of losing their job. They're not sure how they're going to.
Every cop has a fear of losing their job. That's a
Right
big issue.
now, hell yeah.
I'm just in
There's
general.
anxiety around that.
Yeah, in general.
Going to jail, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's beyond losing your job. It's way beyond losing your job. It's like, what's going to happen to my family? What will, like, how will my family provide? What will the loss look like for my family? 110%. Like now, I think that complicates these stressors that already pre-existed, and it adds one more level of stress. And again, having that cultural competence and knowing that the unique needs that are specific to our first responders, and validating them as well.
Very
because
interesting.
that's real life right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what, the story that I told you about my husband, the second part of that too, the people who were standing around with their video cameras and stuff, with their, not video cameras, but
cell phone cameras.
I sound like I'm from 1990. Their cell phone cameras and stuff, they filed a complaint that he was driving too erratic and speeding down the street. Now that guy that was driving drunk almost hit a kid playing in their front yard. That they filed a complaint against my husband that he was driving too erratic and speeding. That needs to be followed up, as you know, by IA. Okay. Now you want to talk about burnout. What part of burnout is, why am I doing what I'm doing? So going through the mindset of somebody who's burnt out. Now, I'm not saying that this is the correct mindset, but this is where a lot of minds would go who are burning out. Why did I fucking stop that car? I should have just let him go. What's the point? Even if I stopped him, I saved a kid's life. So what? That kid being raised in that environment, who knows what they're going to grow up to be? Are they even going to grow up to be a functioning member of society? Nobody even cares if I helped that individual. What greater purpose did this serve for me or the community? Will the community be better because of me? If not, then why should I bother? What's the point? I'm not contributing in a positive way to any type of bettering of this community. So, and especially if the cost of that has to do with your job. Now, I mean, he didn't do anything wrong. Obviously, there was no, the case was closed out, but having to deal with that stress, because, when I was speaking to a friend of mine about that specific story, and their response to me was, well, did he get in trouble for it? And I said, no, because he didn't do anything wrong. Well, then who cares? Really? Now, as a therapist, if I were treating people and trying to help them and be better, and they filed complaints about me all of the time, whether they were justified or not justified, how would I feel about that? Wouldn't that make me question what I'm doing, the cost of what I'm doing versus the pros of what I'm doing? I mean, obviously, right? Who
Where do you
wants
think
to deal with
people,
that stress?
where do you think cops, and I know the answer to this, but I'm going to let you answer this, then I'm going to chime in as well. Where do you think cops can understand to look beyond that and to go out and confidently, with pride, do their job? First of all, I'm going to just say this probably has a lot to do with comfortably knowing you have good administrative support
Well, yeah,
through their examples of good administrative support. I bet you if we looked at police departments, I bet you if you look at police departments, I bet you ones with good administrative support had less police suicides than the ones with none. I bet you that's fucking true.
absolutely. Because now you're going to, again, complicate that stressor. If you have leadership who is going to go out and speak to the media against you or exploit that incident to their benefit, why that I mean, that would contribute to the disconnect between leadership and the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Oh, yeah.
not saying that did not happen in this situation at all. In fact, quite the opposite happened, which was awesome and supportive. I'm
Yeah, that's
just
great.
saying that
That age, and I'm not going to we're not
that
going
that,
to
that
mention his
does
age.
also happen.
Yeah, he works for a more reputable agency when it comes to them being proactive, them having good leadership support.
Yeah.
I don't want to discuss the name of it. I never will.
Yeah. Well, and that is kind of like when you opened up and you were talking about organizational stressors. Those are some of the organizational stressors that contribute to burnout right there. I mean, that's what we need to start digging into. And that's the cultural competence that people need to understand when they're working with first responders. That
In
right
my
there.
mind, I'm hoping that there are administrators who take this seriously. And by the way, the ones who are lining up themselves with street cop training are the ones who are hoping in the future that progress forward, begin to address some of these issues and begin to save lives. And yeah, you know what? It is a selfless thing to do. You probably won't get anything out of being good to another human being, but I got to promise you, I'm going to go spiritual here.
Bullshit.
As you go down to the last days of your life and you're about to meet the big man, I hope you have something to say, like, what did you do for other fellow man? This is what I did. I could have chosen myself, but I chose others.
Absolutely. And I call bullshit on that because the benefit to supporting your front lines is having a more competent front line that performs better and makes you look better. So even if that is your ulterior motive, 110%, it will come back to benefit you as a leader.
We have a lot of work to do in law enforcement. There's no question about it. And listen, I start bringing up the struggles and issues, and I think people have struggles and issues generally in many organizations. I bet you even in your field, there are a lot of people who are locking horns and being pissy towards each other. And you're therapists, right? You should know better.
Yeah. No.
Is that true?
No.
Is there
Yeah,
people?
like the bureaucratic bullshit behind administration. That's an organization. That's the pecking order, right? Like people being put together as an organization and how personalities clash. We can have a whole podcast about this though, like
Yeah.
leadership. I got to come back to relationships, but please know we're going to talk about this shit. I mean, we're going to have a whole podcast about leadership because clearly I'm an opinionated motherfucker.
Yeah. Well, no, you're not an opinionated person. You are basing your opinion on factual data. People get confused, and I start my class with that. I say, you will hear no opinions in this class. And if you think that I'm opinionating something, please do tell. It may sound like an opinion on the surface, but when I say to you things like, why are you out writing tickets when we can get out catching criminals? That's not an observation based on how I feel about the things. It has taken me years to understand what's more important. And that's something I'm very adamant about. It's not a personal opinion. People who
Right.
hide behind and just as an example, who hide behind this idea that tickets are important, haven't had a full understanding of how more important it is to go out, man, I don't know, rescue a 12 and a 9-year-old who are being sold on the black market after being kidnapped 4 hours earlier.
Right.
When you could just rationalize with me on that at all, I'm all ears, but maybe you're irrational when you're thinking about it. And you may like to go out, and that's your production level of where you think your competency rests, and that's okay. But just let's talk about the truth. When we get to the truth, and you can remove emotion from it, we start to advance together.
Mm-hmm.
Removing emotion and having communication is super important. Back to
Yeah.
PTSD and divorces. Let's
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
back on track here.
Okay.
So PTSD, recognizing the signs, you may not even know you have it. And one thing I want to say as we go forward is there's this stigma, and I know for a fact that people are terrified of somebody finding out they may be dealing with something mental. And again, we're going to the leadership thing because there's so many repercussions. If they even listen, where I worked, if you said I'm depressed or depression, or I'm stressed, that was the magic word. You say you're stressed and somebody hears it, you're getting stripped of your gun and your badge immediately. We had a guy
Really?
60 days on the
So
desk.
fucking punitive, man.
Yep, said he got brought to internal. There was an issue with him and another female officer off duty, and he just said to them during the meeting, this whole thing's got me so fucking stressed out. And they went, hand over your badge and hand over your gun. You're done. You're on the desk. You're going to see, we called her Doc Higgins, and that was the name. She was this fucking lunatic in Clark, New Jersey. And they'd say, you're going to see good old Doc Higgins now. And you have to go see this fucking lunatic. She's terrible. I don't know if she's around still, but she was terrible. And that's what they would do. Wow. They send you for a fitness for duty because you said you were stressed because you expressed yourself.
Which is like the complete opposite of trauma informed, which is being trauma aware and how to react to highly condensed, traumatized people. I mean, honestly, again, it's the big T word that nobody wants to hear. But if we're creating, if you guys are exposed through critical incidents to potentially traumatic events, trauma informed, being punitive with people is the complete opposite of being trauma informed. That would be like a kid telling you that they were abused by someone and you punishing them. Mm-hmm. It's the same fucking thing. You wouldn't do that. That's not empathetic.
You know why we find ourselves in situations like this with these administrations? There's no accountability, and they don't give a fuck. It didn't affect them. They don't care, and there's zero accountability. By the way, let me just also say, on a quick side note here, we're not talking about the administrations who are great. Right. Don't think we're not blanketing a statement here. You know what I'm talking about. Those great administrations are very, very, believe me, I'm friends with a lot of chiefs.
Yeah.
When you're the leader of a large training organization, national figure, you're going to know people. They want to know you. They agree with this stuff. I have never worked for an organization that was actually stacked correctly. It was always completely fucking wrong. So I knew all the bad things. I watched it. It was terrible. They just don't care. I've tried to rationalize, how does it exist this way? The fact of the matter is, as long as you don't do anything outrageous, you're going to get paid every 2 weeks, no matter what. So there's no accountability. There's no standard to be held to, and they don't give a shit. Next, please. I still got these guys today, 2 people that I worked with that I don't know where they're at now. I developed some very, very strong alcohol problems. One's fired, and I don't know if one is still, I have no idea. Yeah. And I thought to myself, we're not looking beyond the alcohol problem of what's really going on. Just because they're a police officer and we're holding everybody accountable doesn't mean they're not a human being as well. So when you're seeing things like this, we can't say we should have known better. He was a cop. This is a human being who's going through extreme trauma. Let's deploy some empathy here and say, you are a human being and a cop second. Let's address the human being. Everybody begins to rationalize, and I don't know why that occurs. That they're this ulterior, not humanish thing. And I guess that brings me back to this. If you think you need help, if you think you need coping skills, you know, and you're scared to announce to the world doesn't have to know. Most cops have medical benefits that will afford them the ability to go sit down with somebody. And Jen is going to offer resources to you that you can have, which I think we can go into right now.
Yeah. So we are creating a list of wellness, general wellness stuff. Okay. So it's not only therapists that work with first responders, but there are other services too. So there are coaches that are previous law enforcement. Now they're doing some coaching stuff, yoga. I'm talking with people who do mobility work because a lot of the, you know, the physical stressors on your body. Brazilian jiu-jitsu, tactical stuff. There's just so much there. Equine therapy, like riding horses. So there's just so many different.
I meditate twice a day, by everybody, just so you all know.
Anything
I do
that has
22
to
minutes
do
a
with
day.
first responders, like I'm putting them on here, as I want them to be like first responder specific resources, and I'm compiling a list. Included in that is going to be therapists. So yeah, so I'm making that. It's in the works. It's quite a task because, like we said, each therapist has to be licensed in the state that they work. So I can't find one therapist and have them do telehealth all over the U.S. So they're limited to the states that they're licensed, which is usually one or two. But I'm finding them all. So
if you guys have resources that we don't have compiled, or you don't know if we do have it or not, just you can send an email in. Do you want them to email you or us?
Whichever you want.
What's your street cop email? Is it now?
Jenna Rose at streetcop.com.
Okay. Jenna Rose at streetcop.com, because we have a second Jenna here. If you email Jenna at streetcop.com, you're getting our booker, Jenna Candilis. Right. So Jenna Rose at streetcop.com is the one you're going to want to send those resources to, so we can help compile a list.
Yeah. So, so real quick, you're asking me signs, PTSD signs that work are, you know, I don't even want to go PTSD. Let's just say signs that work is impacting your life. Let's be more proactive. We don't have to wait until somebody's at the end of that continuum. But of course, if they are, this is going to apply to them too. So it's early warning signs, later signs. Okay. So here's some signs. Changes in the way that the world is viewed. Okay. So like the world is unsafe. The world is not fair. The starting to, like I said, like question some of the greater impact of your work. That's burnout, being on high alert, being hyper vigilant, fearing the worst, those kinds of things. Difficulties falling asleep, staying asleep, oversleeping, overeating, undereating, having negative thoughts or pessimism, feeling anxious all the time, worrying all the time, being irritable. I'm kind of telling you what some of the symptoms of anxiety are. Because if I say anxiety, some people still don't know what I'm talking about, right? Having like an upset stomach all the time, GI upset, high blood pressure is also a sign of chronic stress. Feeling emotionally numb or disconnected to other people. Again, where you were asking me, you know, law enforcement and divorce rates, because part of trauma is it affects your attachment to other people, your ability to be intimate with other people. So that's where you see a lot of that coming into play. The obvious, having reoccurring memories, thoughts, pictures, sounds, smells, about some of the things that have happened to you that you've experienced. Obviously, depression, sadness, not engaging in friends anymore, feeling sad, feeling upset, having crying spells. I know no police officers cry, but in the shower, just in case. Feeling sadness, feeling hopeless, feeling isolated, withdrawn from other people, strained relationships, lots of conflict in your relationships, knowing that you're arguing with people, that kind of stuff. And obvious if you're feeling suicidal. Okay. Seek immediate help. And when I say immediate help, you guys work in the field. ER, psychiatric crisis.
The problem. Listen, I'm going to tell you where they're going to go with this right now.
I know.
It's the anonymity. They don't
I
want to
know.
be. How about this? If you does this make?
I know.
Let me ask you if this is okay to say. If you
Uh,
want to reach out for the help, you can email Jenna and she will find you a resource. What about going
Absolutely.
maybe a county or two away so nobody will know who you are? Right,
Yeah.
you're going to walk into a psychiatric facility that you're going to commonly frequent as a police officer. That's going to be very intimidating because you're going to see that person in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So how about going 3
Absolutely.
counties up, 2 counties away where nobody knows who you are?
Definitely. Or some of the broad hotline numbers. So there's like the suicide prevention hotline. There's cop to cop, like we were saying. I don't have all my resources in front of me
You
because
can
there's
Google cop to cop. You can Google suicide
Blue
prevention.
Help. Blue Help has some resources now. So there are a lot of anonymous resources, but honestly and truly, if you're at that level where you're contemplating ending your life, um, I would say that we'd rather have you get help and jeopardize your job. I mean, how great are you gonna be at your job if you're contemplating ending your life? Or
Mhm.
is your job gonna exist if you contemplate ending your life? So I understand the reservation behind it, but at what point are we gonna just call a spade and say, like, fuck this, I need help? And that's
Listen,
part of the
people should have
problem. It's part
yeah,
of the problem,
people
the
should have
stigma.
pride in their work, but I'd rather be alive. And I always tell people in class how I finished the class, and I've said this before. Uh, look, I would rather be alive and working a tiki bar in Key West with nobody else around and enjoying what life has to offer than worried about, am I going to be able to come back to work tomorrow? When I got injured, I had been talking to somebody and I said, one thing that I'm scared about is not having the means to survive. And
Yeah.
the person I was speaking with said, do you realize what you're saying? Do you think you're going to be in front of 7-Eleven with a cup of, with a change cup begging for money? And I said, so, just having an understanding that there are other options.
Hmm.
You don't have to feel bad if this job ended up not being for you. You might be very good at doing something else. Listen, right now, we have a girl who just took a job here. She was a police officer for 3 years. She's in very good spirits. She's great. She found out she wanted to be a videographer. When my
Hmm.
brother-in-law took the job where he works, I said, Steve, I didn't know his mother was running interference for him in the back end. So I knew he wanted to be a cop. He always talked about it. I knew him since he's 14, right? My wife's significantly younger than me. Thank you. Um, the, I said, Steve, just because you became a cop doesn't mean you have to do 25 years, right?
Right.
You didn't sign up 25-year contract. I know that's kind of how it appears at times, but I have been a lot of things. And I always go back to we're going to do a Frank Sinatra reference. And I don't know that Netflix special spoke to me a lot, but That's Life is an interesting and the dynamic of it. Some of the words, I've been a puppet, a pover, a pirate, a poet, a pawn, and a king. Frank
Yeah.
Sinatra's telling you he's been all sorts of things. And here's a guy who's quintessentially still regarded as the most popular American cultural singer ever in history. Second to no one. The only person underneath him next is probably Elvis through our cultural history. So, you know, that's why I tell people you can't make this job your everything. You can't make every person you spend every fucking waking moment with another
Hmm.
police officer. Because I got to tell you, I'm telling you, if it happens and it was out of your control, let's say you get injured on the job, what are you going to do then? They don't want, they're not, I'm telling you, I worked at 3 different agencies. I talked to a handful of people from the one I started 20 years ago, 2 guys, then the following one, 2, 3 people from that one, and maybe 5 from my most previous one that I disembarked from 6 years ago due to a medical retirement. And there are other people that had very difficult times letting go of it. And I'm not going to, really regard anybody in particular, but had to learn some tough lessons later on about like, you were right. I should have just began to try to, if you make this everything, and by the way, have pride in the work that you do, go out and do the thing, the 40, 50 hours a week you're putting in, God bless, but you've got to find another life outside of
Yeah.
you and 7 of your boys going out with blue line Punisher shirts on. I know it sounds fucking crazy. People ask me,
Right.
We were asked a while ago, what's some good advice you give for younger people? And it sounds a little silly, but stay away from the FOP/PBA picnics. You can't make the, people are going to say, oh, you want to stop by and say hello. That's great. But you can't. And you could have a good friend at work. Your partner could be a good friend, but you got to have other friends. Here's one. Have friends from other agencies.
Yeah.
You want to hang out with cops? Go hang that. And that was great for me. My friends, listen, I had cops mixed in from my agency and also friends from other agencies. And we all mixed together. Cool. Personalities are the same or matching. We're similar schedules, 4 on, 4 off, right? We've got 3 overlapping days, whatever it might be. They're working nights, they're up, the whole nine. We get why we magnetize towards each other. Let's face facts. Cops are overall good people. You can trust them. Especially when you're removed out of the dynamic of when cops misbehave in an administrative sense, or they're trying to get the fucking job and get the dog, and they'll backstab a little bit on that shit. Outside of that, even some of your worst cops, like administrative dickheads, are still good dudes in their personal lives. They're generally not scumbags in their personal lives. You want to fit in, That's great. You know what I was doing? I was going to the PBA picnics of other police departments. That's where my friends were. I was going, and, you also separate this ability of people to know every little thing about your life, because then it generates in the mill, and that creates more stress. I drank a little too much. I goofed off. I took my shirt off. I danced. And we could do that. And that's perfectly fine to do. It's just now when the detective bureau hears that you were up for a position, they're going to go, yeah, fuck that guy. Right. So don't make the whole thing your life, because it gets taken away. You're going to crumble. You are going to fall hard. I've seen it happen to folks. Fortunately enough, I haven't personally known anybody that's happened to and they decided to take their life. But I got to imagine that's a huge contributor to why somebody would consider that to be an option.
Yeah. Yep. That's your work life. And then you have home life, which is what we're talking about right now, like relationships. Make sure that you're not neglecting other aspects of your life. Think about 3 other parts of your life, 3 different identities that you have. 0 out of 10, how happy are you? What can you do? Set some goals to make yourself 2 points higher on that scale, right? So definitely knowing that there is an identity beyond what lies within the law enforcement world for you.
Yeah.
I think that truthfully has a lot to do with why people are so fucking burnt out and they don't leave when they should, right?
Yeah,
so it's like, it's kind of like being institutionalized, getting out of jail after 30 years.
It's
right?
their whole
Like Shawshank.
whole.
Shawshank, what's that old guy's name?
Oh, I don't know, but it's the whole identity. It's their
You know
whole
what I'm
identity.
saying, right? He gets out and it's like the world has changed. Who am I? I serve no purpose here. I'm not needed here beyond what he was more needed in the jail than he was in real life. So find how you're needed in other ways besides being a police officer. How are you needed at home? What do you need to do to show up in other aspects of your life with other people? Who are you other than, officer so-and-so? Who are you? Mm-hmm. Who are your friends? Who is your support system? What are your hobbies? What identity do you have beyond that? And some of these warning signs, so spouses, you guys are listening to this. These warning signs are not just for the officers, because some of them are not willing to get the help they need. If you hear these warning signs and your relationship is stressed, and you hear some of these warning signs like, shit, man, my relationship is stressed. This is what my significant other is doing. Now you hear it, you're being educated on what trauma, on what PTSD, on what stress, on what burnout looks like. It's a continuum. So like I said, we don't have to wait until we're at the end of that continuum, the most extreme cases, those 1 or 2 people that you've talked about, Dennis, that you've had in class. I don't want those. Yeah, I do. I want those 1 or 2. Don't get me wrong. I don't only want those 1 or 2. I want the 50-60% of people that the general stress of the job is still applying to them. I want them too, because that's the difference. Again, self-help, seeking help. When can we do? Let's nip this in the butt at self-help. Let's not wait until we need to seek help. And there's nothing wrong with seeking help. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but we proactively get you at a self-help level, right? Where I can send you some books to read, where I can give you some informal resources, where you can learn a little bit more, where you can develop um, more emotional intelligence, like we were talking about.
You've got to want to. I said that earlier. You have to want to get better. And by the way, when you get better at this, life gets better. When you get better, people are just more attracted to you. You're going to feel more confident. I don't mean attracted like in a physical sense.
Yeah.
Why do you think 35, 40 people line up to take pictures with me? You know what I mean? I'm displaying characteristics that humans admire.
Yep. So the last podcast, we did talk about some of those intrinsic motivators. That's going to speak to the people who want to be better. Today, we're talking about people who want to be better for their relationships. If that's their external motivator, fine, I'm grabbing onto it. Next time we talk, let's talk about leadership. Let's talk about that motivator. Next time we talk, let's talk about physical health. If that's your motivator, addressing stress because your physical health is being impacted. If that's your motivator, I'm coming for you too. I'm coming for you in multiple angles. So get fucking ready.
Yeah, no, listen, I admire you tremendously. The work that will have impact as we continue to grow as a company and have more recognition and become less obscure. And that's not a word I'm really, just more awareness of our brand. These will be historic. And I think that the work is admirable very much. I mean, look, we're at hour and fucking half of doing
Are
this.
we? I'm sorry.
No. That's it. But it's such important work. It doesn't matter to be sorry. It's phenomenal stuff. And I'm thankful to be a part of it. I'm thankful that you reached out to me and that you're on this mission and that you thought that I was somebody that could do it with you or bring you into and shed spotlight on you. And I couldn't be more thankful to have you in my life. It's a blessing for me to have you as a friend and part-time therapist that I don't get charged for.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, but no. So, I would be devastated if I ever lost your friendship because I think you're such a valuable human being to know.
Then don't fuck it up.
I'll try not to.
No, I value you too. I'm really, really excited. I'm really excited that you are diverse enough to understand this need. And when you are one of the leaders in your industry, looking at having one general mission, and that mission is to better law enforcement officers, to create better law enforcement officers, then being able to expand that and being able to say, well, you know what, when I came in, that was through one domain, education on how to do their job. But this is another domain too. If you want competent officers, we have to have mentally and physically healthy officers. And for you to be able to understand how to connect those dots and how that comes back to your ultimate mission and be able to incorporate that and expand based upon the needs of your clientele. Because that's what this is, right? Like being able to be flexible to that. I think that that's very commendable, like on your behalf, because you could have easily said like, that's not my bread and butter, Jenna. Sorry, I'll support you, but that's the extent of our relationship. But you're like, no, let's fucking do this, Yeah.
And by the way, like that's how the whole company is operated. It's not operated from, obviously logistically it has to procure revenue so it can grow. I've explained that in the past, but it really comes from that higher purpose. And maybe I didn't know that in the beginning. Maybe I didn't know that subconsciously, but I'm very much aware of it now.
Yeah.
And I appreciate everybody who's along on the journey for what we're going to do and continue to try to do. As long as I'm happy and healthy and I'm here, this will be the work as I'm trying to figure it out on my end. And I appreciate everybody's patience as we try to, it's interesting. It's like you have a starving, arid nation and we have the buckets of water, but we can only pump the well so fast.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying, and I'm trying to figure out more people who can pump. We actually have a girl here.
We are. Yeah.
We have somebody who came in. I have to go in about a minute because I have to jump in the second half of the interview with her.
You're not allowed to. We're talking.
Okay. Well, listen, this was the podcast.
This is awesome. We're going to develop emotional intelligence for law enforcement, right? Yeah. That's what I call mental fitness. It's emotional intelligence, understanding myself, my emotions, how to control my emotions, understanding there's an interpersonal part to emotional intelligence. So that's assessing other people's emotions, like you were saying too, understanding where they're coming from, why they're coming from there, and how to react to where they're coming from. That's emotional intelligence. That's what we're going to build. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's the resource. Can I give you a resource?
Go, please.
All right, everybody listen. I'm going to condense this because I know we're running out of time. The Gottman Institute. So one of the leading researchers in relationships is John Gottman, and I talk a lot about him in my trainings. He's amazing, and I can talk about his research at a different time too. But essentially, he is in the therapy world. He is highly regarded. There are Gottman trained therapists. So if you're looking for a clinician to work with you or your significant other to do some couples work, a Gottman trained clinician is awesome. He has what's called Marriage Minute. So he's John Gottman, Gottman. You can look him up on social media. He's on there. His company is on there, the Gottman Institute. Marriage Minute. You can get like 1 or 2 emails a week just with a couple different paragraphs giving you little tips and tricks. All right. So that's something that you guys can look into. You can also, I have tips and tricks as well. But that's more specific towards law enforcement, and relationships is a small part of that. So I shouldn't say a small, it's a quarter of what I do. So you can look him up. You can look me up, sign up for my email. I don't do like the cheesy bullshit marketing. I like to just send you some small little tips on a biweekly basis. So hit me up, look me up. I'm on all the social media platforms, and hopefully
you're in the new group, right? You're in the new group now.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'll make you moderator in that group as well, so you can facilitate and float around.
Okay. I do a Wellness Wednesday too. So check me out on Wellness Wednesday. We might be popping some stuff in on the private group for Wellness Wednesday. And like I said, I rotate between topics, relationships, leadership, mental fitness, which is like emotional intelligence stuff, physical health and wellness. I'm a personal trainer too. So I talk a lot about how to take care of your body, how to train for your job. So I'm just going to be doing like a lot of wellness tips to combat stress and burnout. Physically, emotionally, from a relationship perspective, the various domains of your life. All right.
Streetcop.com. Conference is October 4th through the 8th, 2021. We're actually looking at the 2022 conference locations. Check us out. Our Facebook group is now, you'll look for Street Cop Training, new group.
New group.
New group. Instagram, LinkedIn, streetcoptraining@gmail.com if you need something. We're here, man. You just got to plug us in a little bit, do the best we can for everybody out there. And again, we will be back soon for more mental health training.
Yeah. Tell us what you want.
Bye, Jen.
Bye.